incredibly difficult to reconcile that a year has already passed. On the one hand, it feels like it was just yesterday, and in the same moment, it feels like an eternity ago.
Communities are gathering around the world, including the GTA, to mark 1 year since the October 7th attack on Israel by Hamas. War continues to rage in Gaza as Israel tries to eliminate the terror group, displacing millions of Palestinian families caught in the fighting. Good afternoon. 1,200 people were killed in the Hamas attack on Israel, with more than 250 hostages being taken into Gaza.
According to Palestinian health officials, nearly 42,000 people have been killed in Gaza as a result of the war between Israel and Hamas. Events are being held in the city today to mark what is a somber anniversary. Our Sean Leathong joins us live with more. Sean.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, you can see where I'm standing outside the Lipa Green Center on Bathurst. They're setting up for a very large ceremony tonight. They're expecting to have about 20,000 people here to mark this somber event for the anniversary of October 7th. But this morning, family members of victims from October 7th were speaking out today. One of them we spoke to, Harel Lapido. His niece, Tiferet, was actually killed on October 7th while she was attending the Nova Music Festival. He gave us some details about just what happened that day. We also spoke to Maureen Lesham, whose niece, Romy Gonen, is actually still one of the 101 hostages who are missing, and she told us about what this year has been like.
Even though we know a lot of what she's been through from some of the rescued hostages, but at the same time, very laser focused on getting her back. My family in Israel spends every single minute of every single day trying to get not only her back, but also for the release of all 100 more hostages.
At 9 o'clock, she called her mother. That was her last call, telling her that she loves her, and they're shooting everyone. She saw her friends, youngsters, shot dead.
Now, you heard Harel speaking there about his niece, Tiferet. Now, he actually told the story where she was on a truck and they had been fleeing the festival and they had a chance to get away, but she saw her best friend didn't have room on the truck. She left the truck fearing what could happen for her, but wanted the chance to help her friend. Unfortunately, both were killed. Now, we understand that there will be a ceremony here, as I mentioned tonight, as many as 20,000 people, invitations out to politicians and dignitaries marking this very somber event. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Nathan and Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. Demonstrators put Palestinian flags on a bridge over Highway 400 at King Vaughan Road this morning.
We are here to commemorate that day because the genocide continues, but it did not begin on October 7th, and it has been ongoing for 76 years now. We have 186,000 plus people dead. Most of them are women and children and civilians.
Demonstrators who set up the flag say they are expressing their support for the Palestinian people impacted by the ongoing war in Gaza. Several student walkouts are also planned at high schools in Mississauga in solidarity with the Palestinian people.
Still to come, the latest on the expanding conflict in the Middle East. We'll have more on the situation on the ground overseas a little later in the show.
A man is in hospital following a stabbing in the city's northwest last night. Officers were called to Weston Road and Coulter Avenue around 9 p.m. for reports of a stabbing during a fight. The victim was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Police say several suspects left the area in a vehicle. They have not provided descriptions.
And an investigation is underway after a woman was stabbed yesterday afternoon at Oakville GO Station. Halton police were called to the station shortly before 1 p.m. A woman was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. A man was arrested at the scene. So far, there's been no word on charges. And police are investigating a homicide at the Toronto South Detention Centre earlier this month. Police say an inmate was assaulted by another inmate on Thursday. He sustained injuries and was transported to hospital where he died the following day. The victim has been identified as 69-year-old Euplio Cusano. 54-year-old Ivan Ademovich has been charged with manslaughter.
Canadian billionaire Frank Stronach's sex assault case is in court today. The 92-year-old facing 18 charges in connection with several alleged incidents dating back to the 1970s. Stronach was first charged in June after 3 women accused him of sexual assault. Since then, 10 more women have come forward. Stronach's case will be back in court on November 4th. The case is set to be moved from the Brampton courthouse to Toronto.
There's been a major development in the murder case against an Ontario man alleged to have sold suicide kits around the world.
Kenneth Law's lawyer filing at the Supreme Court of Canada, arguing there's no way under Canadian law what his client did can be considered murder. CTV's John Woodward has the latest.
Hello. As a kid, Leanna Kirk loved to dance and to laugh.
She was happy. She had lots of friends. She was great. She was a real spark.
But her dad, Dale Kirk, said as Leanna got older, she grew withdrawn, quit school, and disappeared for long periods.
She became quite a different kid.
By 21, she was in and out of hospital and using methamphetamines. A coroner's report says she ordered a deadly product in September 2022. A month later, she was dead.
It's your worst nightmare.
That product ordered from a website run by Kenneth Law, a former Mississauga chef now facing murder charges for 14 similar deaths in Ontario, including Stephen Mitchell, Yesenia Bedoya Lopez, and Ashton Prosser Blake. His products connected to the deaths of many more young people, at least 130 total deaths around the globe. But that prosecution faces a new challenge. Crown lawyers are appealing to the Supreme Court to overturn another case that found for a suicide to be murder, a deadly action must overcome the victim's free will. Kenneth Law's lawyers filed Friday to intervene in that case, saying Mr. Law is not alleged to have been present at any of the deaths. He is not alleged to have deceived the victims into unwittingly ending their own lives. It would impermissibly warp the language of the criminal code to assert that someone who mails a toxic substance that another person later voluntarily consumes in another location with suicidal intent has actually committed their murder. The Crown says the appeal will be potentially determinative of one of the largest murder cases ever charged in the province of Ontario.
Not every case of assisting suicide is going to be a murder, but they didn't close the door entirely to a situation where possibly assisting a suicide could also be a murder if you have something more, such as encouraging a person to commit suicide and taking like an active role in it.
Whatever happens to the murder charges, Law is still facing 14 counts of aiding and abetting suicide, but the punishments for that are much less. Instead of a life sentence, it is typically less than 2 years in prison. John Woodward, CTV News.
The sexual assault trial of Toronto councillor Michael Thompson began this morning in Bracebridge. Thompson faces allegations of sexually assaulting 2 women at a luxury cottage in Muskoka on Canada Day weekend in 2022. The lawyer for the 64-year-old councillor for Scarborough Centre says Thompson will fight the 2 charges and plead not guilty. The Crown's expected to call 3 witnesses during this trial. Now, the 2 women who allege they were sexually assaulted and another witness who was at the cottage that weekend. The trial is expected to last for roughly 5 days.
One person is fighting for their life in hospital following a crash in North Etobicoke. Emergency crews were called to Albion Road and Humberline Drive just before 7 a.m. Police say 2 vehicles were involved, with one of them colliding with a tree. The cause of the crash is still under investigation.
A 68-year-old man is dead following a collision in North York last night. The crash happened around 8:30 near Parkway Forest Drive in Don Mills, south of the 401. The 68-year-old man was taken to hospital with life-threatening injuries, where he later died. The other driver, a 20-year-old man, was not injured. The cause of the crash is still under investigation.
And an investigation is underway after a Toronto police cruiser was involved in a crash during a pursuit in Mississauga. This was the scene at Lakeshore Road and Hydro Road around 6 p.m. yesterday. Paramedics say one person was taken to hospital with minor injuries, while another person was arrested at the scene. Police have not provided details about the pursuit or any information on potential charges.
And an investigation is underway following a rollover on Yonge Street near Empress Avenue. It happened shortly before 11 a.m. Now, police say they received reports of shots being fired from one vehicle at another. Paramedics took 2 people to hospital with minor injuries. Police say suspects left the scene in a black pickup truck, and they're asking anyone with information to come forward.
A city councillor is calling for an inquiry into the construction of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. Councillor Josh Matlow, who represents Toronto St. Paul's, is expected to put forward a motion at City Hall next week calling on the province to launch an investigation into the light rail line. Construction on the Eglinton Crosstown began in 2011, and it was originally supposed to be completed in the year 2020. Metrolinx has still not provided a date for the opening. Matlow will ask council to request the province's transportation minister and the CEO of Metrolinx personally attend an executive committee meeting to take questions about the delays and the cost overruns.
The province has announced funding to expand mental health services in Ontario, focusing on early intervention and support.
To provide them with timely, individually tailored and age-appropriate treatment to support symptomatic and functional recovery, such as returning to school, to work, and building social relationships.
Health Minister Sylvia Jones made the announcement at the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health this morning. She says the $19 million in funding will focus on people 14 to 35 who are experiencing early-phase psychosis to get them the care they need. Pearson Airport hosted an event yesterday aimed at assisting people with neurodivergent needs in getting accustomed to traveling.
We know that familiarity is key, and repetition really helps to build a degree of familiarity and build confidence that you can travel with your family members through the airport experience. Today you'll get a chance of working your way all the way from parking your car through to the seat of the aircraft. That includes check-in, going through security. There's a number of different noises and sounds that you'll be hearing, and so it allows these families to understand what they're going to experience the day they actually travel and how to better prepare themselves.
Ready, Set, Fly is an airport familiarization tour aimed at supporting families and individuals with autism. Crews show them around the airport and simulate aspects of traveling, including check-in, security screenings, customs, boarding a plane, and interacting with airport staff.
This year it's even bigger. We have more people here. I think what is more significant too is that we have more autistic adults coming through too, which means that we're reaching out to more people. More people are learning about this, and more people are seeing how they can fit this into their own lives. Families, autistic adults, and I think they're seeing that this is a very useful program, a very successful program, a program that will enable them to enjoy flight, enjoy going on vacations with their families, their loved ones.
This year marks the second annual Ready, Set, Fly event. It runs in partnership with Autism Ontario.
A meteor was spotted in the sky over Georgian Bay last night. The fireball was captured by cameras operated by the University of Western Ontario. The university's Department of Physics and Astronomy says the meteor ended near Allenwood Beach, meaning any meteorites are likely in the lake. Researchers say if any meteorites made it to the ground, they would be small and likely difficult to find, but they are conducting a full analysis.
We have more news in a moment, but first, here's a live look at the city this afternoon. A mixture of sun and cloud. We are where we should be this time of year, temperature-wise, but what about the rest of the week? Jessica Smith is here with a look at the current conditions. Hey, Jess.
Hey, and it feels so cool in comparison, right? We had such a warm first few days of the month of October, even over the weekend. We're still sitting kind of in the upper teens, low 20s. We're just closer to where we should be, but we do have a gusty northwesterly wind carrying us through this first part of our day, so you'll notice that bit of a chill in the air. Right now, sustained winds at 33 kilometers an hour, those gusts a little closer to 40. Now, as we step into the afternoon, those winds will get a little bit lighter, but it really doesn't dissipate until this evening. Right now, we're sitting in kind of between about 11 to about 15 degrees, so a significant difference from just a few days ago. Right now, through the islands, a little cloudier. We're at 16 through Pearson, 15. This afternoon, just 17, and again, that gusty northwesterly wind, but we are just sitting where we should be for this time of year. So the adjustment is going to be a little more dramatic than the last week. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including the chance of some active weather this week. But right now, it's back over to Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Jess. We return now to our top story, marking 1 year since the October 7th attack by Hamas on Israel.
Ceremonies are being held in Israel today to mark the somber anniversary amid worry about the ongoing fighting in the Middle East and what that means for the region at large. CTV's Heather Wright has more from Tel Aviv.
Well, certainly a somber day here in Israel as the country marks 1 year since the attacks of October 7th. There have been memorials held across the country, people pausing to reflect on the lives that were lost that day, but also what's happened in the year since. We had the opportunity to speak to a number of family members of those still being held hostage in Gaza, talking about what the last 365 days have meant for their family, and a lot of uncertainty. You know, there is that constant worry of not knowing whether their loved ones are alive, what condition they are in, and when they might be coming home. And this all, of course, is taking place against the backdrop of Israel fighting wars on multiple fronts. In Gaza, where we know the death toll from this conflict has now surpassed 40,000, according to the health ministry there. People in Gaza are being told to flee the north as Israeli tanks roll in. And we're seeing still that despite a year of fighting, Hamas still has the capability of launching those rocket attacks towards Israel. There were a number of rockets that were fired towards central Israel, the shrapnel of which landing near Tel Aviv. Most of them were intercepted by the Iron Dome. So all of the memorials surrounding October 7th are really happening against this backdrop with, again, the uncertainty of what's to come next. There are still questions about what Israel's response to the missile barrage by Iran is going to be. There are questions about how long its offensive into southern Lebanon might last. And so as this country pauses to reflect on October 7th and to remember all of the lives lost that day, there is, again, that feeling of uncertainty in terms of what might come next for the people of this country, the people of this region, as this country, Israel, continues to fight Iran's proxies in Gaza, Hamas, and in the north, Hezbollah, and of course the Houthis in Yemen. And so people here are pausing to reflect and also wondering what the future holds for them. Back to you.
CTV's Heather Wright reporting from Tel Aviv. The federal inquiry into foreign interference is set to hear from security officials working in the office which supports the prime minister. Employees of the Privy Council who work on security and intelligence matters are scheduled to appear today. Later in the week, the inquiry is set to hear from Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly and former Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino. The hearings are looking at the ability of Canadian agencies to detect, deter, and counter foreign interference. Pressure continues to mount, meantime, on the Trudeau Liberals over the possibility of an early election.
The federal government is facing a persistent push from the opposition, threatening to send Canadians to the polls sooner rather than later. CTV's Jeremy Sharon has the details.
The clock is clearly ticking on Parliament Hill, but it's when the alarm could go off that isn't clear yet. Speaking on CTV's question period with Vashi Capellos Sunday, the NDP's House leader says talks with the bloc on how to handle the Liberal minority haven't started yet.
I think there's a difference between what they might be saying publicly and what they're actually doing privately.
The comments follow a threat from Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet midweek that if the Liberals didn't support their motion on increasing old age security,
we will start as rapidly as next week to speak with other oppositions in order to get ready to go into an election.
The non-binding bloc motion passed in the House of Commons, but most Liberal MPs voted against it. The government has indicated willingness to negotiate the demands.
We remain focused on working for Canadians and are open to working with anyone who's putting forward constructive ideas that are going to make things better for Canadians.
But the bloc has drawn a hard line in the sand on the issue.
It's a challenge for the government in the sense that it means there's only one rope left that they swing on to keep this parliament alive.
That rope is, of course, the NDP, which has vowed to proceed on a vote-by-vote basis, but also says it's ready for a campaign.
We're ready for that at any time. My signs are ready to go at any time.
And while that threat of an early election looms over Parliament, the Prime Minister insists his priority is governing.
That's my focus. I'll let other people talk about politics.
But Trudeau may not have complete control of his own fate. The other bill that is crucial to the Bloc ultimatum is currently held up in the Senate, where independent senators have raised concerns about its impacts.
Jeremy Sharon, CTV News, Ottawa.
Florida residents are bracing for another major storm as Hurricane Milton gathers strength in the Gulf of Mexico.
I urge Floridians to finalize your storm preparations now. Enact your plan. I highly encourage you to evacuate. We are preparing, and I have the State Emergency Response Team preparing for the largest evacuation that we have seen, most likely since 2017 Hurricane Irma.
The Category 5 hurricane is forecast to make landfall Wednesday in the Tampa Bay area. Many parts of the state are still recovering from Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago. And for more on the storm, we're joined live with CTV's Scott. Hurricane Milton continues to gain strength. What is the latest on developments there?
Nathan, this storm, this hurricane is rapidly intensifying, rapidly gaining strength in the record warm water of the Gulf of Mexico, as you mentioned, now taking aim at Florida's Gulf Coast, projected to make landfall sometime late Wednesday night, potentially early Thursday morning, and it's expected to cut a path right through the middle of the state. Unlike Hurricane Helene less than 2 weeks ago, that impacted several southern states in the U.S. This is expected to really cut a path through Florida, but remain hurricane strength as it moves through the entire section of that state and out on the other side on the Atlantic. So the big concern right now, officials are preparing for widespread evacuation orders beginning as early as today, even though the storm isn't expected to hit until late Wednesday. And the big concern is the storm surge. Of course, there's wind. Of course, there's rain. But officials are projecting 8 to 12 feet peak projected storm surge. And of course, that is higher than most ceilings, which is why there's so much emphasis right now on evacuation alerts and evacuation orders for many along the coastal communities. And so that is a significant concern. As we said, it's pretty much taking direct aim at Tampa Bay. The Tampa airport has already announced it'll suspend operations Tuesday morning. As we said, even though the storm isn't expected to make landfall, the eye of the storm until sometime late Wednesday night. As of right now, states of emergencies have been declared, Nathan, in more than 51 counties in Florida.
All this, Scott, comes as Floridians are still trying to recover from Hurricane Helene. How are they managing with all that?
Yeah, there are a lot of people right now who really can't seem to catch a break. Millions of people in the path of Milton. And of course, Hurricane Helene caused the death of more than 225 people across 6 states. Fortunately for those outside of Florida still recovering, still in cleanup effort from Hurricane Helene, it appears Hurricane Milton will not cut up through the U.S. It'll cut across Florida. So for the other states like the Carolinas, like Georgia, it appears they'll be spared this time around, even though, of course, they're still dealing with a lot of flood water, a lot of roads that have been ripped up, a lot of homes that have been damaged. Now, the unique challenge, because we're on the heels so quickly of another storm, of Hurricane Helene, as we're talking about, for those in Florida, and we heard this from Governor Ron DeSantis this morning at a hurricane update, that there is also a significant concern about debris, so much debris left behind from Hurricane Helene. So right now there are round-the-clock debris clearing operations. He's directed Florida crews that had gone to North Carolina to help, to bring them back to Florida to help in preparation of Hurricane Milton. The National Guard is also on debris cleanup duty. So the concern is, as this storm roars ashore, all that debris can become projectiles, could become flying objects, really making matters worse. Here's more from Governor Ron DeSantis.
Had a lot of debris left from Hurricane Helene on Florida's Gulf Coast. That creates a huge hazard if you have a major hurricane hit in that area this week. So we've marshaled state assets to be able to help with that mission, and we're going to continue to do that until it's safe, until it's no longer safe to do so.
Once again, Nathan and Michelle, this storm has been rapidly intensifying now, a strong and rare Category 5 storm, and expected to make landfall along the Florida Gulf Coast sometime late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. Michelle? All
right, CTV's Scott Hurst with the very latest on Hurricane Milton. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan.
2 American scientists have won this year's Nobel Prize in medicine.
The Nobel Prize is a recognition that's sort of 100 times as much press and celebration as any other award. So it's not a part of a continuum. It's a quantum leap.
Gary Ruvkin and Victor Ambrose discovered microRNA. The tiny bits of genetic material serve as on and off switches inside cells that help control what the cells do and when they do it. MicroRNA could be helpful in developing drugs to treat diseases and serve as possible indicators of disease. Nobel announcements continue tomorrow with the Physics Prize.
Pope Francis is set to appoint 21 new cardinals in December, and a Canadian will be among them. Archbishop Francis Leo of Toronto will join appointees from 18 different countries. He'll take part in a ceremony called a consistory to install the new appointees on December 8th. It will be the 10th such ceremony called by Pope Francis since he became pontiff 11 years ago.
After a relatively mild start to the meteorological and the astronomical starts to the fall season, we're finally trending a little closer to seasonal. It feels cool in comparison to just how warm it has been. We're generally this time of year around that 14, 15 degree mark for the high. We're still above that today, but we're closer than we have been in a while. Coming up, I'll have a full look at your long-range forecast, including how we're trending as we head throughout the week ahead. All those details coming up right after the break.
We return to a story we told you about earlier in the newscast. 2 people are in hospital following a rollover on Yonge this morning. CP24's Beatrice Vaisman joins us now with more. Beatrice, what have you learned?
Michelle, police telling me that this is believed to have been a road rage incident. This is how it started. Let me show you what it looks like. We're at Yonge and Empress. I'm standing in Mallasman Square looking west across Yonge. There's an overturned Kia Sportage and it looks horrible. Airbags deployed, windows all shattered. And I'll start by saying that thankfully there's no serious injuries here. 2 people did go to hospital, a man and a woman were told, but thankfully it sounds like their injuries are pretty minor according to Toronto paramedics. So this was 10:45 this morning. I'm told by a staff sergeant with Toronto Police that there was 2 vehicles traveling southbound. There was some kind of road rage incident that started, Michelle. I'm told that one driver tried to run the second driver off the road. The Kia Sportage then flipped over, and police believe the vehicle and the driver actually that instigated all of this, I'm told, actually fled southbound. And so now police are looking for this vehicle. I'm told it's a black Dodge Ram pickup truck, last seen going southbound here on Yonge Street. Police telling us that so far no one is in custody in relation to this crash. And again, thankfully, as horrible as it looks and as horrible as it could have been, quite frankly, there are no serious injuries in this collision, Michelle. Also, I should add, police are looking into the possibility that there was shots fired here, the possibility that this was a shooting here this morning. Many witnesses reported to police hearing some pretty loud bangs, and so police are now here on scene, and there's multiple units here, both officers in uniform and plainclothes officers, who are actually trying to piece together exactly what happened. They haven't laid down any evidence markers yet, which would give us a better idea as to if they've actually found shell casings at the scene, but here we have a pretty active police investigation. We'll be learning more from investigators coming up, hopefully the next half hour or so, Michelle.
Beatrice, that is so troubling, and given what you've just mentioned, the police tape, I would imagine there's a large traffic disruption in that area.
There is. So Yonge Street traffic closed both northbound and southbound. At this point, police say it's Finch Avenue from Yonge to Kenneth Avenue and Yonge from Empress to Elmwood. So again, northbound and southbound. Of course, Yonge is the major artery here in the city, so a chunk of it now closed here just outside of Mallasman Square. Obviously no word on how long it's going to be closed for, but if in fact gunshots were fired here, Michelle, it's going to take some time for forensic investigators to get here to gather all of that evidence and then to clean up the vehicle, get it back on its wheels, tow it away from the scene, and then clean up all the debris. So it'll probably be several hours until vehicular traffic can travel on this stretch of Yonge.
I would imagine. CP24's Beatrice Vaisman live for us on Yonge Street this afternoon. Thank you.
You bet.
People looking to own a home on the Toronto Islands are now getting a chance. The Toronto Island Trust has opened the purchasers list for people trying to snag a home on the islands. Anyone interested will have until October 29th to enter their name into the draw for one of 27 available spots. When a house goes up for sale, the trust sends offers to the top 150 to 250 people on the list.
There's a lot of interest, and that's why we do the draw, is so that everybody has an equal chance to get on one of those 27 spots. I mean, the island it's a magical place. It's a step away from downtown, but also the convenience of being a step away from downtown. And yeah, it's, you know, we're very super lucky to live on the island, and you know, every time I step off that ferry, it's like a weight is lifted. And
the list first opened in February of 1994, a step away or a swim away.
Yeah, but honestly,
in that water. But if you have a boat, I'm sure, or the taxis or the ferry, there's options.
They figure it out.
It's cold.
You know what, though? Not a bad time to be on the island. We've had a really nice fall so far. It got so warm on the weekend, felt warmer, I thought, than the temperature was saying.
Yeah, Saturday was beautiful. It was, again, like a summer day with the humidity and the warmth.
It really kind of does something to your brain because you're thinking, I'm like, okay, well, we're into October, but I'm still wearing shorts and a T-shirt, and it's hard to kind of comprehend that we are, just a few days away from Thanksgiving, but we are getting into that time of year where we are starting to feel that switch. And today, you definitely noticed it. Weather is brought to you by the Presler Law Firm. Injury lawyers you don't pay unless they win. A few more clouds out there early on, looking like a cumulus cloud. Really pretty, though. Beautiful when the sun kind of peeks through the cloud deck there. We're not looking at much in the way of active weather throughout the day today, but you notice that chill in the air. It actually feels like fall for the first time since the meteorological and astronomical starts to the fall season. Temperature-wise, it's not terrible. We're sitting at 15. Again, that northwesterly wind, a little gusty as we head throughout the day, will add that bit of a chill to the air, so a layer may be a good idea. But we're holding on to a fairly seasonal day. We'll sit at 17. We should be at 15, so we're kind of right in that sweet spot for where we should be. Gone are the days of the 20-degree temperatures, at least for today and tomorrow. We'll see some of that return later on in the week, but overall, we're kind of holding on in that low to mid-teen range. Into this evening, we're again closer to seasonal, sitting at 9. We should be at 7. We're a little fresher areas out towards Bancroft, through Perry Sound, and a little bit warmer through Goddard. You're sitting at 10. They should be at 5. We saw a line of showers kind of make their way through parts of the GTA yesterday. It continues to push its way east. Behind it, a bit of a trough that will bring the chance of a few passing showers late tonight and into the start of the day tomorrow, but nothing super organized. As we head throughout our Monday, we're watching for some light clouds, spotty showers in towards Waterloo region, but pretty brief in nature. As we head throughout the rest of our day, a decent amount of sunshine out there. A beautiful start. Although it isn't warm the way we've been experiencing over the beginning of the fall season, we're still dealing with a decent amount of sunshine. Overnight is the best chance for that rain to roll through for us here in the GTA and the core, but it's pretty brief in nature. And as we head through Tuesday, we're watching for the chance of more spotty showers off and on throughout the day. The heaviest, though, being north of us up towards Aurora with that line through to Oshawa. As we tip in towards the rest of the week ahead, overall, it's not bad. It just feels cool in comparison. Almost an identical day tomorrow. Into Wednesday, it is fresh. We're dropping down to just 12, a low of just 4 degrees. We start to tiptoe back up towards more, I guess, enjoyable fall weather if you like the warmer fall. We're looking at 19, maybe 20 for our Friday, and looking ahead to the weekend, what's going to be a busy one for sure. A decent amount of sunshine. So although it is cooler, we're still right where we should be. Michelle, Nathan, I'll send things back to you.
There's a lot to like. Thank you, Jess.
Thanks.
In sports, Max Pacioretty is now officially a Toronto Maple Leaf. The veteran forward signed a one-year deal today. Pacioretty will earn a base salary of nearly $874,000 this season. The 35-year-old made the team out of training camp on a professional tryout. He had 4 goals, 23 points in 47 games with the Washington Capitals last season. Steven Lorenz will also join the Leafs on a one-year contract worth $775,000 following his professional tryout. The 28-year-old won the Stanley Cup with the Florida Panthers in June.
Still to come, Canada's fertility rate is on the decline. We'll have more on why Canadian families are shrinking when we come back.
According to a new mathematical model, the secret to cooperation might be forgiveness. For more, we're joined by CTV science and tech specialist Dan Riskin. Dan, what on earth does math have to do with how well people get along?
Great question. I always imagine you've got these mathematicians with no friends saying, like, if just we could model this, maybe we'd be able to make a friend. And maybe that's where this came from. Maybe not. It's probably not, but it's still a funny way to think about it. Trying to understand how a society works in terms of a whole bunch of interactions and trying to model that is really important in terms of understanding what breaks down in society and why you get violence in some places and not others. And so there's a lot of attention to this. And a new study suggests that part of the magic might be that when you hear rumors about other people, you get conflicting news sometimes. You might hear, oh, you know, this person's really nice, and then somebody else says, well, they're not that nice. This new model suggests that when you get information like that, if we adopt a strategy of saying, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. If I get 2 pieces of information that conflict, as long as it's not a lot of information saying that they're negative, I'm going to forgive some of the worst stuff that people tell me, and I'm going to give them a chance. if we go with that strategy, it ends up being a very, very stable situation and society can flourish. And so they believe that this points to part of how gossip works and how we deal with gossip when we meet new people.
Wow, that's something we can take in our lives. Appreciate that. You've also got a story about the power of mindful meditation for reducing pain and how meditation is more powerful than we might think. Tell us more.
Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that if you have somebody that meditates and they say, I'm going to meditate, then they're going to experience less pain because they believe it's going to work, right? The placebo effect of just thinking, because I'm meditating and I know meditation should work, I should experience less pain. So for this experiment, they used a procedure where they touch the back of the calf with a hot device that's hot enough that it hurts, but it doesn't actually do any damage. It's at 59 degrees Celsius. And some people were trained in mindful meditation before they went through this procedure. Other people were given a sham meditation treatment. So they were taught how to meditate, but they actually weren't taught anything. They just sat in a room with their eyes closed and weren't told anything about how to breathe or what to think about, whereas other people got very specific guidance about how they should focus on their breathing and how to experience pain and all these different things. Then those people had the experiment done to them, and the people who were trained in meditation did significantly better than the people who weren't trained but thought that they were meditating. And so it removes the placebo effect, and it shows that if you know how to meditate, you've got something at your disposal that's just as powerful as a drug in terms of reducing the amount of pain that you feel.
That's incredible. Let's talk about now cute dogs. We've heard that dogs evolved puppy dog eyes just to win our hearts, but there's new research that says it's a bit more complex than that. What's the story here?
Yeah, there was a really great science story about 5 years ago showing that there was a muscle in dogs that lifts the inside of the eyebrow so that dogs can do that. You know, I don't do it. I'm not a cute dog. But, you know, they do this thing where they lift their eyebrows and they tilt their head and it melts your heart. And it's almost like the muscle isn't really attached to the eye. It's attached to your heartstrings. And when it pulls, you do whatever that dog wants. And researchers had believed, this paper 5 years ago, that this muscle evolved just so that the dogs could make that cute face, because wolves don't have that muscle at all. But a new paper shows that that muscle is present in coyotes and it's also present in African wild dogs. So our dogs have taken advantage of a muscle that was already there and they've used it to become cuter in a really interesting way. And it's actually the wolves that have secondarily lost it, not that it was invented by our puppy dogs.
Oh, my goodness. Before we let you go, we have to say that you've started an email newsletter called, I love this, The Bat Signal, because, you know, you love all things bats. Where can we find out more about this?
Yeah, thank you. It's called The Bat Signal, and if you just go to followthebatsignal.com, it's just a weekly free newsletter, and I just send out some cool science stories. So if people are interested, that's where they can find it.
No doubt they will be. Dan Riskin, you always teach us something. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Well, in other news, Canadian families are shrinking, with a growing number of people choosing to have fewer kids or none at all.
For a second straight year, the number of babies being born in our country is at an all-time low. Here's more.
They're cute and cuddly, but the nursery population in Canada is shrinking. New data shows the country's fertility rate has dropped to an average of 1.26 children per woman, a record low, with British Columbia having the nation's lowest fertility rate at 1 child per woman.
When we get below 1.3, we may be entering what's called a low fertility trap. And that means it might be next to impossible to raise the fertility rate in the future.
The agency says Canada now joins other countries such as Italy, Spain, Japan, and South Korea for lowest low fertility countries. It says the number of births in Canada between 2022 and 2023 was stable, but that the number of women of childbearing age increased, which accounts for the lower fertility rate. Experts say the number has been declining for years for various personal reasons, but also the rising cost of living. That's led to women deciding either not to have children or delaying.
We're seeing more women coming to see us later in life than ever before, into their early 40s, mid 40s, even late 40s, hoping to have their first child.
StatsCan also reported the rate of premature births in 2023 was 8.3%, the highest recorded in the past 5 decades, saying it could be due to a higher proportion of older mothers as risk of a premature birth increases as the age of the mother increases.
I think some people are having to make these choices because of economic reasons, career reasons, societal reasons, social reasons, support reasons.
If the fertility rate doesn't improve, there could also be economic consequences, with experts pointing to possible labor shortages in the future. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
Still to come, Meta is previewing plans to roll out a new AI tool that generates high-quality videos. We'll have those details when we come back.
Meta is previewing plans to roll out a new AI tool that generates high-quality videos in response to user requests. Meta showed off videos created by Movie Gen while suggesting its AI-generated content could soon appear in your social media feeds. At the moment, the software from the Facebook parent company can create videos that only last a few seconds based on text prompts. They can also be generated to include specific people with just a picture. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg said a version of Movie Gen AI will come to Instagram next year.
A language law in Quebec has hit a sour note with some music store owners who could be forced to stop selling certain items without French labels.
Critics of the law are calling it out of tune with the business reality. CTV's Geneviève Beauchemin reports.
Music, it's often said, is a universal language. But the words on instruments, labels, packaging sold in Quebec stores must soon be French or must include French translation. So says a law to be enforced as of next June.
After June 2025, we wouldn't be allowed to sell you a Marshall amp because it says volume on it.
And that, say some music store owners, is out of tune with the realities of the business. Bill 96 was passed in 2022 to boost the promotion and protection of French in Quebec. It marks the first major transformation of Bill 101, the French language charter, since 1977. Many instruments and equipment in music stores are imported, and the standard industry language is English. Owners say most manufacturers are unlikely to offer bilingual or French versions for a small market.
They'll just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we won't sell them. We won't sell them in Quebec." So, of course, people will still buy them. They'll just buy them from an online company that's not based in Quebec.
Stores could translate labels, for instance, but owners here say that would be a tall order with hundreds of products, if not more. They could be forced to pull some of them off their shelves. Quebec's language minister says he doesn't think stores will be forced to close.
It takes a long time to translate something, but I think we can find some solution, and we.
What do you mean?
We have to say it again. It's a right to have all the information in French when you buy something.
But some music store owners say they hope Quebec changes its tune. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Coming up, infusing traditional knowledge into modern art. An Indigenous silversmith is creating pieces aimed at inspiring a younger generation. Art has been a constant in the life of an Indigenous silversmith living in New Brunswick.
He's infusing traditional knowledge into contemporary work in an effort to teach the next generation. CTV's Sarah Plowman has his story.
Nature circles Nguitkook First Nation, also known as Tobic, where Shane Pearly Dutcher's journey is mapped by tradition. Weaving metal into baskets, the latest for a museum in Maine.
That represents the people, the Wabanaki people.
At a glance, the strips look like bark.
So when you get closer to it, you start to realize that it is actually metal, and it's copper. It's got some patina on it.
From large to medium size, Pearly Dutcher has pushed what's possible. His work has been displayed at art shows, won an international award, and was the trophy for a PGA golf tournament in New Brunswick this summer. Then there was 2008, when he crafted a pin worn by residential school survivors as Canada apologized in the House of Commons.
It was probably one of the most significant pieces I've ever made because of the weight of the message and the intention of the piece.
As he shifts to larger pieces, the Wolastoqey's artist's work is sought after.
I think it's this wonderful mesh of looking at his community, his culture, their past, and putting his own artistic spin on things.
Pearly Dutcher sees the basket as a symbol of Indigenous resilience.
it really represents how all of our people come together, you know, and that weave and the weavers and standards kind of represent all of our people kind of, you know, working together, keeping each other strong.
Baskets to carry teachings and tradition into this generation. Sarah Plowman, CTV News, Nguudkuk First Nation.
I think we're starting the work week pretty well.
I think so. There was a lot of sun to start the day. Saw a little bit of cloud. What are you expecting?
It's a pretty standard day, right? We don't have anything too crazy weather-wise to kind of kick things off, but we are going to notice a change. It feels a little cooler in the morning. We're kind of into that fall transition with the weather that should have probably happened a few weeks ago. We're holding on to a little cloud cover off and on throughout the day, but overall it's not too bad. Still a little breezy out there, that northwesterly wind adding the freshness out there. Maybe a layer, a good idea. Now, we're sitting at 15 here in the city, 16 through Windsor, 13 out in Ottawa, so a noticeable change from just a few days ago. We will warm up as we head in towards the end of the week, but by Wednesday, oof, just 12 degrees.
All right, that is it. Thank you, Jess. And that is CTV News at noon. Remember, you can get Toronto's breaking news all day long on CP24 and at our website, ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Jessica Smith and the whole team here, have a pleasant afternoon. I'm Michelle Dubé.
And I'm Nathan Downer. Be sure to join us later for CTV News at 5 and 6. Have a great day.